Okay, welcome everybody. Welcome to another edition of Complete Sports Media's podcast. I'm your host, Darren Campbell, and we are very excited today. We've got a great leadership coach joining us. Her name is Iggy Perillo. Give her a wave and say hello. Hi, Iggy. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me here, Darren.
Thanks for joining me. Yeah, this is great. I really was it was a lot of fun doing some research of you. I typically know a lot of my guests that come on regular as analysts. I know a lot of the athletes and people that I brought on. So this was a lot more research for me to try to find out your background, not knowing you previous. And but why don't you share a little bit of your background, how you became a leadership coach, where did you get that idea and start on this endeavor?
Yeah, I have been working in the field of leadership and team development for over 20 years now. And I think it started, I'm sure, doing sports as a high schooler and middle schooler or whatever. I love being on teams. I love working with folks.
Yes.
And I loved, that sports, I think for me, were a vehicle for a lot of fun and engagement and just joy in my life, definitely. And eventually I did athletics through college and then moved on to some other things, but worked in pretty active outdoor industries, but always enjoyed that idea of how a group of people can do more together than they could ever do individually. So it is, I mean, the things about teams they say are true. Teams can do a lot of stuff that individuals can't do. That's no shock there to anyone. That is not late breaking news. But then if you look closer, some teams are really fun to be on and really great and we get a lot done, and some teams you're on, you're like, this is terrible, I don't like anyone, we're doing nothing, oh, I dread having to deal with these people. So there is something really to be said from my lived experience. I'm sure I'm not alone, and with other folks out there who've been on teams or in groups of people, either sports or work or just different parts of their life, where they really gel and everything clicks and everything's amazing, and other teams where it just is terrible. And so to me, that speaks a lot to the leadership of those teams. And so I think it was this is the long-winded, gradual process story of saying that looking at how leaders affect teams has a huge impact on how that team functions, how they grow, what they can do, as well as the personal life of the individuals in those teams and in those groups. So that was kind of the circuitous yet long and winding path that took me to leadership development and team development both. But I'm really focusing now on how to help leaders lead better because their impact is so magnified in the people around them.
Yeah, well, of course, yeah. Definitely makes such a difference when you have a good leader. I can look back and see both sides. And some of the successes we had was because of the great leadership group, not necessarily always the captain and the coach, but a group of people that got along well, that seemed to know how to gel. And then some of the teams that, for some reason, personality conflicts, different values, different things, we didn't gel and we didn't have success. So so it's really good that you're able to see your strengths and be able to help these people and make you a living. That's the sort of definition of happiness to me, and I've said that on a bunch of the podcasts. Try, as a viewer or listener, try to find out what you're passionate about and try to see if you can make you a living. I guess that's where you have fallen into and made a life for yourself.
Oh yeah, it's so much fun to work with people, and it feels really meaningful to me to help people do better in their lives. I think that is really just rewarding in itself.
Yeah, that's great. So you've worked with some teams that have won world championships. That's amazing. That's an accomplishment. Tell me a little bit about those successes.
For sure. I live in Portland, Oregon, and the local roller derby team, there, you might be thinking, really, that's a thing? That's a sport? It's really a sport, super competitive, worldwide. There was a time when roller derby was a show, kind of WWE style sort of entertainment, but then it sort of died down in the 80s, and it came back as a very athletic, very competitive sport throughout the early 2000s and into the present. And so the sort of rebirth of roller derby in the early 2000s brought back this very athletic, very competitive sport, very women-centric, very women-run and women owned, not necessarily owned, but like operated, I guess, and very sort of scrappy, startup-y, kind of a different collective model, a cooperative model versus a corporate model in terms of how the leagues and everything are even run. So that's like another maybe unnecessary background, but the roller derby league here in Portland, Oregon is one of the largest actually in the world. And I happen to live in town. I went to a couple bouts here and there. It's really fun. Like it's a fun, engaging, very action-packed sport to watch. Like it's, something's always happening. It's very, there's a lot going on, a lot of a lot of energy when you're in there.
Yeah.
And then sort of got connected to the league was looking for volunteers because it's a volunteer driven league and it's not corporate, and so it's a nonprofit but also run by so many of the volunteers within the organization. So I'm like, oh, I do team development stuff. I'd love to work with the junior program, the teens. I was working with teens a lot then. And they're like, oh, great. Yeah, fantastic. And so I started working with the teens. And then one of the adult teams, they have home teams and they have a travel team, right? There's like a local league, but they also have one league that competes nationally and internationally. Nice. And so the travel team had just gone through a really trying time where their longtime coach, long beloved coach, was slowly dying. He had, I believe, brain cancer and was like literally dying and would go into practice and be laying on the bench, coaching and engaging, but not able to stand always. Yeah, they were just in a really bad state and about to head to this tournament, in like a couple thousand miles away in I think it was in Minnesota at the time. And they were just like, their team just felt so disconnected and shambles. Like it was such a big deal and everyone was taking it very differently and processing this event very differently as people do. Some are, went within themselves. Some were like really, looking out of themselves a lot more and had their needs were just really amplified and people were feeling raw. So the team was supposed to head to their championship tournament in Minnesota within a month after the coach passed away. And the team was really feeling frazzled and distraught and disconnected. And so they called me in to talk and work with them a little bit.
That must have been tough. That must have been
brutal. Yeah. There were a lot of tears. I mean, even during that meeting talking about it, it was really an emotional meeting. And my job at that point was to help them feel connected and feel like they were in it together because they had gotten so, everyone on the team was reacting in almost different ways, but also just feeling really disconnected. And roller derby, like many sports, requires a really close connection and flow. Like they're always moving, always going. It's a really exciting sport to watch that way, but you have to be really connected to your teammates in order to do well. You can't, it's not a very individual sport. Right. And so they, I helped them talk through just some like really practical plans and tactics. Like, hey, you're going to be at this tournament and someone's come up to you and say, hey, I'm so sorry to hear about your coach. People will be saying that to you. How are you going to react in that moment? How are you going to take care of each other in this space of a tournament? There'll be, I think, at least 15 different teams there, crowd, like it's very, like accessible. Like often the players are in the stands watching bouts, people are very accessible and findable. It's not, you're not very sequestered away from other folks during tournaments there. And so they made plans. We talked through how to help people stay connected and how to really process this event that had happened to all of them and how to be like that. It's okay, whatever they were feeling, and kind of process through grief and process, but also how to then turn around and be really competitive and really active and really engaged in their sport with that too. Wow. And so then I've been working with them ever since. And the Rose City Rollers have been the world champions now for 5 of the last 6 years, 4 of the last 5 years. I think 4 of the last 5 years. Okay. And roller derby there's over 460 leagues, I think, around the world, competing on every continent, just about. Not Antarctica, but they're from everywhere. And it's just a very competitive, huge sport that a lot of people are engaging in. So I'm super proud to be associated with them and such a great, competitive, dedicated team.
Yeah, well, that's amazing. Yeah, that's a lot more than you could expect people to have to be going through, losing their beloved coach, and especially in such a short time span before they have to compete at such a high level and raise their game to win and reach the goals they reach. So that must have just did that added a lot of extra pressure to you? How did you feel?
Right.
That aspect of it too, not just
like me doing my job.
Right.
Like, good luck. Yeah, it was a unique situation for sure. Like, I don't think I'm happy to not have had to deal with that before, and that like it's not super common is excellent for many reasons. I think it was a lot of pressure, but also like I know how to build connection among people. Like at the same time, it's not new. It's just sort of really condensed extreme version of the work I'd done before with teams and other folks about, usually I have more time, like, oh, this season we're going to work on these things. Great. We'll be ready for the end of the season. Now it's like, oh, we have 2 weeks. Great. And things are maybe all over the place. So it was more extreme. Maybe that's the pressure. But I think the folks, that short timeline also made people really focused. Like everyone showed up, everyone's there, everyone's really committed, like because they know they have such a small amount of time. So I think in that sense, that short amount of time made people even more engaged and more willing to like really dive into things. When had there been like 6 months or a year, they might have been like, okay, I'm putting it off. Like I'm not sure, like I don't want to. I think this is often we see people don't want to deal with challenging things or situations because they are challenging and they're hard, and people kind of want to step back or push away from those. So the bonus was they were very engaged, and the non-bonus was they were very engaged because they felt like they needed to be. The pressure was up. So
Yeah. Another thing that really intrigued me was your experience with Outward Bound, the dog sledding, the things like that in that Boundary Waters area. I looked that up on the map, and that looks like a very beautiful part of Minnesota, or not Minnesota, but yeah, I guess the state of Minnesota, close to Lake Superior, just below Ontario. Beautiful area. You spent a lot of time sleeping outdoors and going through these Outward Bound programs. Yeah, tell our viewers and listeners about that a little bit.
Well, the beauty of that is that I would get a group of strangers, and we would literally have to get from where we were to where we were going. Like we have someplace to go, and the thing I like about both dog sled and ski travel, and as well as canoe expeditioning, I did both, is that you have everything with you. So often backpacking, you're limited by just how much food you can carry. You can only hike for so long because your pack will be so heavy you'll get crushed and die. So canoeing, though, you throw it all in the boat and you just have to take it out and carry it like one piece at a time. So it's a different style of travel if you have to carry your gear to another lake or another waterway. So I could be out for weeks at a time and traveling with these essentially strangers and helping them form into a really high functioning team. And the goal was always that they are leading themselves as a team. So it wasn't that I was the role of a guide, or my co-instructor and I were instructors, like teaching them how to travel safely and effectively, but also teaching them how to lead themselves and lead each other. And so we sort of had a rotating leadership model. And I think that informs a lot of the work I do today, where I don't need to show up and tell someone what to do. I think the sort of classic consultant shows up and is like, okay, here's what you do, this, and like kind of takes over the leadership at times.
Right.
And working, especially with athletes and teams, like I'm not going to be their captain or their coach or, kind of take on a role in their team, but I'm going to support those leaders to do better and be amazing at their job. So I think that sort of informs the philosophy I bring to my work around how to help people be excellent leaders for the teams that they have, as well as helping teams get where they need to go.
Right. I've been part of lots of teams, and there's always been a captain, and there's differences in those captains. When I think back to them, I was a captain on some teams as well, but some captains lead by example. They're the best player on the team typically, and so the organization thinks, oh well, they'll be able to lead by just how good they play. They're not very vocal. They don't talk a lot in the locker room. They don't have those rah-rah speeches, but they're still very good leaders. Then there's the ones that do talk a lot, have the speeches, are able to really assemble the groups. Is it very difficult dealing with either one of them? Is it more challenging dealing with the one that doesn't necessarily be very vocal?
I don't know if that's a challenge. I would add a third category of captain, though, to your list.
I knew there was. Yeah, there's definitely a few more, but yeah, please do. Yeah.
Well, and the one I think I end up working with the most is the captain who's like, hey, I want to be the one giving the speech and like pumping up the team. And instead I'm dealing with like this, like the emotion and conflict and challenges and personalities. And like, they want to be dealing with the, motivation and sport. And instead they feel like they're pulled toward, the people in a different way. That's not necessarily the sport specifically. So not necessarily skills, exactly for the field or the track or whatever.
Right.
And so, and I think some of those, I don't know that I mind if captains want to be led by example. I think captains, I love working with team captains, by the way, because I think they are the coaches expect them to be this sort of middle ground between the players and the coaching staff often.
Mm,
And
yeah.
the captains often have no training whatsoever. They're just like, yeah, you're the captain. You're the best player is a great reason to elect them or, put them in that position. Or, oh, you've done it before? Great. Or you want to do it? Okay, cool. In different sports, obviously, it's a little different. Or we need you to be a captain because you're actually on the track. And so we need it, or on the ice, for hockey, like you need someone to wear the letter. Like you got to do it. Okay, great.
Yeah.
It's you, And so I think the ways people fall into sort of these captain roles is interesting and unique in different sports. And in roller derby, they're actually elected. So their team has to elect a captain. So they already think this person and they have to run and, it's like a little more democratic. But I think people are still in these same surprise roles. We're like, oh, I would rather just like be the example and be the model. Like, oh, I would rather just, give the speeches. Like, oh, wait, now I'm being asked to sort of do these other things. And so I think, I don't know that one or the other is harder to work with. I mean, the easiest people to work with are the people who want to grow or learn or change, right? The hardest, any of those people could be like, everything's terrible, but it's fine. I'm fine. And you're like, okay, I'm out of a job. Like that doesn't help me. Like if you're not interested in,
If you're closed-minded and
yeah.
you're not interested in taking feedback or
And I
constructive
think
criticism or
yeah. And
yeah.
sometimes it's like the coach being like, hey, you need to work with my captain. And the captain's like, I'm fine. I'm like, okay, well, there's obviously some disconnect here. And some of that's on like the coach to be like, well, how do you need to work with your captain better? Or like, what do you want from this relationship or this situation that is not happening? So there can be sort of different angles, like what the team needs, what the captain needs, what the coach or that sort of coaching crew needs. They all sort of they're aligned, but all a little bit different track. So sometimes it's just getting those in alignment.
Yeah, that's smart. Yeah. Before we go any further, I want to mention our partners and sponsors. We can't do this without the great help of a lot of people behind the scenes. And I want to mention Anchor FM right off the top. They've been a really fantastic partner and sponsor for Complete Sports Media. They call themselves the easiest place to make a podcast. So you go to Anchor FM and you follow the steps and you can do the things that we're doing here. We also have a great partner in Verbero. Verbero is a hockey equipment and apparel company, and they are the industry leader in technology, performance, and value. And the V350 stick is 350 grams, the lightest stick on the market, explosive. It'll impress your friends, your teammates. If you get a V350 stick, hopefully some of you got them under the tree at Christmas. I had been promoting it quite a bit before the holidays. I want to talk about Pampas and Possibilities. They design and sell dried florals, floral arrangements, and they do installations. They're designers of handmade, curated things with West Coast vibes at very reasonable prices. And finally, Forever Living. They are the aloe vera company, and they grow and manufacture aloe vera-based products for health and beauty. And you just go to CompleteSportsMedia.com. You can find out tons of details on all of these companies. And there are links so that you can purchase products at reduced prices. So thank you to our partners and sponsors as always. Okay, so there's so many things I want to get into. I hope we can fit it all in our short time frame today. But one of the things I love so much is humor. I see that you listed as one of your tools, one of the things that you are able to implement into your leadership coaching. And I've really, I just, think that it's very important that you can, laugh in your daily life and bring that in. Tell me about that aspect of bringing it into your coaching.
Sure. I'm a big fan of playing games as a way to teach lessons, right? And everyone in the world of sports probably fundamentally knows this, a little bit. Like, yeah, I'm playing game, but like I'm learning. Amazing. And I think sometimes my job is just to pull the learning out of the games and fun that people are already having.
Nice.
And when I work with teams, like there is not always a lot of laughter. Obviously, some of those meetings I talked about, there was not much laughter at all. But once you are laughing and connecting with people in that way, like I think that breaks down a lot of the barriers people have, and that helps people flow and work together so much better. And it just is another way of connecting. Like you can connect by knowing stuff about people. You can connect by doing stuff with people, like physically. And I think you can also connect by laughing and playing and having fun with people. And I think people find different things funny or humorous or whatever. But I think the joy that people get from doing challenging things together, and sports is so easy, as well as wilderness travel that you mentioned. Like we're doing something really hard together, a hard practice, a hard game, a hard, whatever it is, and that helps people connect and be together and unified in ways that I don't think happen without that intention or without that sense of purpose.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I think you're bang on there. One of the aspects of something over the pandemic, there was a lull in sports, and a lot of people that are sports lovers, passionate about it. It was a really big void in our lives, and it was so nice to see all the sports come back. And they've had their issues with COVID, and trying to perform their games and keep the seasons going. But one of the aspects that came out of it that really surprised me was the TV viewership was way down on every single league except the WNBA. And the WNBA has been always saying that they have a hard time getting viewership, getting enough support. And so I was really, really thrilled that they were able to actually increase their viewership and get a lot more people interested in their sport. It was exciting. Why do you think that happened in the world? Would you have any kind of idea why
That's
they were able
interesting.
to turn this around?
I hadn't heard that, but it is fascinating to know. Like I feel like, I mean, I haven't followed basketball for a while very closely, but my impression is that the WNBA has been very politically active, or in letting their players have a lot of personal say and sort of in the political realm and also their personal realm, um, in a way that I think other sports have not, and definitely have actively shut down, I think is my impression from other sports.
Sure.
So I don't know, I wonder if that is part of it. I mean, this is conjecture, right? That letting the players be humans and connecting with them as a person and what they value, if that's resonant with you, I think makes you engage with their sport and what they're doing a little bit more. So that would be my theory. I'm not an expert on the media watching, but it's awesome to hear. I think basketball is a fun sport. Like, why not?
Yeah. No, I was just so thrilled. I want a lot more female presence on the show. I've always supported female sports very, very ferociously, but I just feel like they're always fighting an uphill battle. They're always having difficulties and problems just trying to get that support. The only sport really where I've been impressed has been tennis. They were able to at some point say enough's enough. We should be paid exactly the same as men, and that has been fantastic to see, and has been able to put a lot of those women into really amazing positions of power and influence. And I'm just hoping that eventually in our lifetime we're going to see a lot of the other female sports be able to get that type of exposure.
I think, in my impression, like roller derby is it's like roller derby and then there's men's roller derby, right? In a lot of sports, it's like basketball, and then there's women's basketball. Like you sort of center on the men for many sports, and roller derby is definitely centered on the women. And I think, and there is men's roller derby, and there is, like many sports, there are sort of two parallel, fields. And I think but the sport is a little different. And I think when people go to a women's basketball game or a women's hockey game, whatever, and they expect it to be exactly the same as a men's game, I think it's just not the same, right? But I think that doesn't make it worse. It's just different. And if you go to a roller derby bout and then you go to a men's bout, you're like, oh, like I can see why this sport was really developed for like women's bodies, women's size, women, like the like sort of aspects of women. And so like I don't actually like watching men's roller derby as much as I like personally watching women's derby.
Right.
And I can go and see like, oh, these are actually kind of different sports, like the pace, the timing, the pieces of them are a little bit different. And so I think maybe I would love that if we get to a place where we're like, oh, like the women's sports and the men's sports are actually just different enough to be like appreciated in different ways for different things, different skills, different aspects of the sport.
Yeah. One thing that I thought of preparing for this was there'll be an office, and there'll be one boss, one leader, and then there'll be, let's say, a dozen employees or 20 employees. So I don't want to only just talk to that one person. I'd like to talk to the whole entire group. So my thought was, how does the regular employee that is not in a leadership position, how do they gain some satisfaction out of watching this today? How are we going to interest those other 20 people?
Sure, for sure. Well, they are like really crucial, obviously, to getting anything done and getting, accomplishing things. So
Yeah.
it really fundamentally is about like all the folks on the team or in the organization together. I think one thing that I would say is that if things aren't going well for you as a teammate, whatever type of team you're on, corporate or sport or whatever, like things are probably not going well for some other people, and which just means that you're not as effective as you could be, right? Or things aren't as smooth or as easy or as positive or as optimal, whatever optimal is in your field there. So I think if things aren't going well for you, that's an opportunity. I don't actually believe in like a single leader and like a bunch of followers. Like I don't think that model is really accurate, because that disempowers all the followers to being just, who are you, just like a pawn being moved around, like that's not actually true. And so for people to engage as like a leader from wherever they are within the team, even if you're the the bench warmer, third string, whatever it is down there, like you have a role on this team and you are there to work toward this purpose. And if it's not going well, like you have a valid perspective to bring. And so I think I would advise those folks to, there's sort of two angles. One is to understand how your leader works. I think that's super useful and beneficial to do, because you're like, oh, they're really a detail person. I need to come at them with details. Great. Like they're not going to like enjoy me bringing a big picture idea to them if they're all about the details, or vice versa. So understanding how to communicate with people is, I think, a universal skill, especially your leaders, because they're making decisions that then come back and impact you a little bit. And the second thing is being prepared to have some of those more challenging conversations around like things aren't going well, or this isn't working for me, or this needs to change. Like I think when people sweep too much of that stuff under the rug, that's where you see culture decline. And people are like, well, it's fine if no one's on time. Like, well, I guess it's okay if, no one, everyone kind of leaves a little bit of a mess for someone else, like that, those pieces of culture, like they're small and maybe little details, but they really wear on people and bring down organizational culture, team culture too. So if things aren't working, be ready for a hard conversation. And thing two is to make sure that you're able to communicate well, especially during those harder conversations, or where you're telling someone something isn't going well, being able to bridge like a language gap or like a thought process barrier so you can really interact with people the most effectively.
Yeah. How do you deal with toxic culture in a team?
Ooh, that's a classic one, right? Yeah. I think, you prevent it. Yay, prevention. Like there's like the best solution, time machine. It's tough. It is tough. And I think toxic culture really speaks to the power that individuals have within a team. You might have a really leader that's really positive and really connecting, and you might have teammates who are really disconnecting and negative, right? And so your disconnected negative team is not going to be as functional as your positive and connected team. And just having one leader on board with that and no followers doing that is not, your team is just going to like tank eventually over time. So dealing with culture really, I think, involves discussing, I think you mentioned this earlier, like understanding your shared values. Like your goal is maybe the same, like, oh, we want to compete, we want to win, we're making this, whatever our company is doing, we're doing that thing. So that's maybe easy, the goal, but like the values that underlie that are actual, not just aspirational, like, oh, we're really honest and transparent here. I'm like, are you really honest and transparent, or you aspire to be honest and transparent and you're actually kind of backstabby and competitive? Like, what is actually happening here? So getting into those conversations, right, like about what is our actual values that we live and what do we actually aspire to and want to do, and having those types of conversations really make culture very clear. I think because I think cultures also can be amorphous to people, like, well, this is just how things are here, like, oh, well, things are just kind of negative, or I just feel this vibe, or it can be hard to pin down what culture is or how to fix it. So understanding values helps, understanding process then after that, but understanding values first. Like, what do we actually value here? What are the things that matter to us as this group of people today? And on teams, there's turnover, or in any type of organization, there's eventually new people in, people, come and go, whatever it is. Evolution happens over time. So being willing to have those conversations again and again versus, we made a poster, it's over there, those are values, like, we're done, everything's fine.
Right.
I think people want to do it. Some of these conversations are messy and hard, and they want to have them once and be done with it, and I don't think that's super realistic in terms of culture, because culture isn't a thing you do once and are done with it.
Yeah, no, yeah, right. Yeah, bang on again. Yeah. One aspect that I've always been pretty aware of is that if a leader to me shows confidence in me, I have confidence in myself, and I can push myself higher and higher and higher and achieve more. If a leader doesn't think I can do anything, then I start to question myself and my abilities, and I never achieve what I probably could have. I guess that's something that could be pretty universal for a lot of people. Do you see that in, as a real big problem with some of the leaders out there not really having confidence in their people immediately?
I think that is maybe part of it, but I think it's how they communicate that that's also an added huge challenge for people. Like
Mm,
you mentioned sort of those quiet captains. Like if the
mm,
quiet captain is conveying their confidence by just being like a nod, and then someone else might miss it completely, and they're like, they hate me. Like I can't believe they think I shouldn't be here. I feel terrible. I'm the worst. Whatever.
mm.
And so I'd say like having how you communicate that confidence in your player matters a lot. Your players, your team, and I think also there is something to be said for like that. Ah, there's this funny part in sports where people they're not always great at self-assessing. They're like, oh, I'm pretty good, whatever. Like I can look at this number, but like, oh well, they just rated me on a bad day or whatever. Like I should be first string and I'm third string. Like, oh, what people do whatever. And so someone else, there's like an external assessment that's happening there, and as well as internal assessment. And I think people can strive and grow, and like the thing that your leader really should be cultivating is a growth mindset, right? Someone who wants to strive and do more regardless of where they are on the hierarchy or the status or the playtime, whatever those things are. And so if you're cultivating that as a leader, having confidence in someone's ability to learn is different than having some confidence in someone's ability to do something at any given moment. So if I think you're a great player, you can make a million free throws, great. I hope you can foul it all the time, make all the free throws in the world, amazing. But if I think like, oh, you can learn to be a great free throw player, and then you can like inspire that confidence in other people and help them become great free throw players, like that makes me a much better leader than whether my confidence in you is like static. Like right now, I can assess your skills, whatever. But if I can coach you to be in a place where you're always growing and learning and always improving, that is like 100 times, 1,000 times better. And that's how your teams become champions, I think, too, is that they're actually pushing each other to always grow and learn. Like your great players aren't great at a certain level and that's it forever. Like your great teammates, like they need to be always growing, learning. If they
Yeah.
once they just start maintaining, they're actually, the plateau is the same as a decrease.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, no, I see that. I see that in sports all the time. I watch a lot of basketball, and I see a player. He comes into the league, and he's got a certain skill set, and the guy that goes in the off season and works on his weaknesses, and suddenly the next season he's actually good at that thing that he wasn't superior at. Keeps evolving and having a longer career. And the guys that just come in and think I'm great, their careers are a lot more muted, a lot shorter, and yeah, I think you do have to keep progressing and you have to keep learning. One part of you that I was very excited about as well was that you're a voracious reader, and I don't think enough people read anymore. I work with people and I talk to people that haven't opened a book in years, and it's shocking to me. My family was always very big on reading, and I just can't get enough of reading. I want to constantly entertain myself as well as get better self-help books and knowledge about others. I think it's so crucial, and I wish more people cracked books on a daily basis. I think it's really great that you do, and continue to do that in your life.
Yeah. And I'd say reading books is so much different than reading a magazine article or a blog post or, a kind of a short piece, even a scientific, paper or whatever. Like I think a full book when you can really get into things deeper is so amazing.
Yeah.
What are you reading right now? I'm so curious. Like if I didn't realize you were a reader too.
Oh yeah.
What's on top of your list right now? Maybe is a good question.
Well, I just finished a book yesterday. It's actually written by a gentleman by the name of Nick Nurse, and he was the coach of the Toronto Raptors, or he is the coach of the Toronto Raptors. and he had a very amazing journey to actually get himself to be that coach. He went to Europe. He coached minor pro teams. I think he spent 30 years before he finally got an opportunity in the NBA. And a fantastic, really amazing read. Yeah, just so recommend it. Great guy. And the other book that's just right in front of me right now, and I just cracked it. This is the story of Willie O'Ree. He is the first African American, actually he's Canadian, sorry, African Canadian, first black player to ever make the NHL.
Cool.
Yeah, he had a really amazing life story, and he was kind of forgotten for many years. Everybody talks about Jackie Robinson breaking the color barrier in baseball and being so widely known. Willie O'Ree was just kind of forgotten by hockey, and some guys decided, hey, we got to dig this guy up and make people aware of him. And the NHL ended up hiring him. He became an ambassador. I got a chance to meet him in the mid 90s, and I've always just thought, what an incredible guy, what an amazing life story. And this book just finally came out, and I'm reading that right now too. Yeah.
Fantastic. Those are both sound like really interesting reads. I'll have to check them out.
Yeah. How about yourself? Can you think of a book that's been cracked recently from you?
Yeah, I'm currently reading, the book is called Curious, and it's by Ian Leslie, and it's about curiosity, like what curiosity actually is. And we sort of think like, oh, I'm just curious, whatever. But there's sort of different types. There's this, I'm not done with the book yet. So far there's sort of this dispersed curiosity. Like I'm randomly curious about everything, kind of like, what's that? Oh, what's happening over here? But there's also epistemic curiosity where I'm going to focus in on one thing and get to know it really well. And so if we can balance these sort of different types of curiosity, like we are actually happier when we pursue one thing a little more deeply at times. And then as well as being at time, kind of, oh, what's that shiny thing, kind of distracted out there. But our ability to focus in and focus our curiosity, I think is leads to a lot of happiness. And the third sort of type of curiosity is empathetic. So being curious about how other people think and feel. So there's sort of these three types that he's going into and breaking apart in different ways. And it's really fascinating about like what we're curious about, how we enact curiosity affects how we perceive our own happiness in a lot of ways.
Okay. Wow. Oh, that's that sounds like a great read too. Yeah, good for you to find such an interesting book. Yeah, I think that's going to be a really great read. Switching back to the leadership aspect of it, I can think of two of my favorite bosses of all time, and the sort of similarities that they had was that they were always they'd always show their thanks, or they would always express their thanks. They would say, I appreciate your hard work. Thank you so much for all your effort this week. They would just constantly give that reassurance that they thought you did a good job and they were appreciative of it. Is that something that you have as an aspect that a lot of leaders should be giving to the people that they're leading?
Absolutely. Which brings up this other great book called The Languages of Appreciation in the Workplace by this fella that I'm forgetting his name right now, but he also wrote the book on love languages, which I think is really popular and out there in sort of the popular culture more. But his Languages of Appreciation sort of takes this concept and brings it back to like how you communicate with people in the workspace is different than these sort of more intimate, like personal relationships in many ways. And so it's fascinating because I've done this with a few teams now, taking the whole team through like, well, how do you actually like being appreciated? And not everyone likes the same thing. Some people like a physical pat on the back, it means more to them than a speech about them. And some people, if they, they'd rather just get a physical thing, like, oh, I have this, plaque or whatever. That means more to me than, someone talking to me about it and telling, sharing it with me verbally. It is different for different people. And so understanding like how you like to be appreciated helps. And having your leaders understand that, then I think those teams are like, once you can appreciate people in the way that they value being appreciated, it's amazing. As well as like, I think there are ways where we think how we like to be appreciated is often what we do for other people, but that's not necessarily what they want. Like, oh, like I really want to give you a pat on the back physically all the time. A high five, that's how I'm gonna show appreciation. And they're like, quit, I don't care. Like that doesn't mean anything to them, but I give them high
Yeah.
fives every day, right?
Yeah.
And so they would rather have something else. And once you build that sense of know that piece about your people that you're working with, it becomes, I think people feel more appreciated. Like we want to feel appreciated. And it's crucial to do that. Like I think you were mentioning this as a leader, like if you're not appreciating your people, which is different than sort of fluffing them up and be like, oh, you're doing an amazing job. Like, no, you're not, like that kind of fake appreciation,
Right.
which is really common and doesn't help anyone whatsoever. But, I think that's actually more detrimental when you're trying to sort of fake it. So understanding how to appreciate people in ways that matter to them and also ways that feel meaningful to you as like the person offering it. If you're just faking appreciation, you just come off as disingenuine, right? And that's a trust barrier that's really hard to overcome.
So is that just as simple as walking up and asking somebody how they feel appreciated? Is it? Is
It
it
can
that
be, yeah, for sure. Like there's, I think, and the book kind of breaks it down to sort of 5 different styles and different things and whatever. And if you, or you can just ask people like what would feel like appreciation to them. And some people, it's, I think there's you can do have quality time, acts of service, be engaged with people on a physical level, like a gift. And then there's like tangible, physical, and there's words. So I think of those 5, finding out what matters to people most. And I think a lot of people haven't thought about it. They're like, if you ask someone, how do you like being appreciated? They're just like, I don't know, like whatever. Like I think you have to sort of maybe pry into that conversation. And I think people are also, they feel modest about it. Like, well, if I tell you, like that's like somehow weirdly tooting my own horn to say how I want to be appreciated, then you're just going to go and do it. Then it's, like,
I see. Yeah. Right.
but it's worth knowing. It's worth having those conversations. And that's, it's worth doing to understand that every time I give you a high five, if you just like, stop touching me, like that's not going to go, that's not going to be a great sign of appreciation.
Yeah. That 5 Love Languages book, the guy that wrote the 5 Love Languages is Gary Chapman.
Yes. Yep. That's him. Correct.
Okay.
Good job. Good job.
Yeah, I actually really thought that book was fantastic because I don't think people, even in their most intimate relationships, realize what it is that actually is the language that they need to be spoken to like or treated like. It's shocking that you could spend so many years with somebody and think that you're showing them love and they're not appreciating it or feeling it because their love language is something completely different. That's amazing, and I wish more people understood that really quickly off the bat, so they could show that appreciation, show that love, and get the affection back because that person was searching for that, wasn't getting it from that person, so they're going to go probably get it from somebody else.
Oh yeah, and if you think it's uncommon in like personal relationships, it's so much more uncommon in work relationships, right? Where you're that just kind of like a step more distant, and those relationships are just a tiny bit more distant, and so people I think spend 0 time on it, and so you might get a someone who's like, oh, I love giving appreciation speeches, and people are like, okay, another appreciation speech, like it's
Yawn.
like yeah, exactly. Like and other people are like, oh, I felt really appreciated, that speech really spoke to me, and you're like, great. But understanding it's different for different people. So yeah, like, and I think fundamentally it just builds more connection, and more connection makes everything better.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it does make everything better. And that's really great that he's been able to do that because like you say, I'm sure it is that one level away because you're not able to have those intimate conversations. You're not able to really break down some of the barriers and walls in an employer relationship or a teammate coach relationship. I find that unfortunately the world seems to be becoming a lot different than it used to be. It used to be coaches could be friends with players, and employers could be friends with their or their employees. And I see that there's a divide there. There's quite often I don't see them breaking bread together. They don't go out for drinks together. They don't socialize. They don't have that. And I don't know why the world's changed so much in that aspect, but it seems to for me. And maybe not in your life. Have you seen some of the people that you work with are still close with their leaders?
I think it's interesting. I see this happen when folks take on a captainship role, for example, in a team. Like they're a new captain to a team, and they're like, "Oh yeah, people look at me differently, or people treat me differently." I think it's sort of. I don't know that they necessarily want to be more isolated from their teammates, but like they feel that sort of vibe a little bit because they do have to act as a go-between, or they have some decision making, or like there's sort of like there is like a power differential of some sort that happens, and I don't know if that makes people uncomfortable. So I've seen that happen, and yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure what to make of it exactly, but it does happen out there.
Yeah, the book that I mentioned about Nick Nurse, the coach of the Toronto Raptors, he was their assistant coach for about 5 years, and I see this every time I'm in a locker room, every time I'm around professional athletes. The assistant coaches really have a lot more intimate relationship than with the players than the head coach does. The head coach will come in once in a while in the locker room and say a little speech, and then he'll leave. But if a guy has a problem, if a guy has an issue, he'll go to the assistant coach and talk to him, bend his ear, maybe use him as the go-between to get more playing time, or sort out any issues and difficulties. As soon as that guy raises eventually to the head coach level, now he's just, oh yeah, I can't talk to him the same way I used to, and it's unfortunate. I really wish there wasn't that disconnect.
Yeah, I think I see this in the corporate world too, where they talk about being siloed really often, where you're like, oh, well, you're just in this management silo. You wouldn't have any idea what the workers are doing, over here. And I think that's hugely problematic because, and the silos, I think, happen within departments too. Like, oh, this is the marketing versus the design team versus the production team, whatever it is. And so they don't ever intermingle or interact. And it also happens with like, oh, you're the leadership team versus the people team, the workers, whatever, the teammates. And I think all those different divisions, either horizontally or vertically like that, really just break connections. And I think that slows your team down fundamentally because you're not communicating as quickly or as easily. And not that everything needs to go to the head coach's, ear every time, but I think that does make things colder and more distant. And I think that disconnection is its own challenge.
What do you think people need to know to do their best? What do they need to, how are they going to achieve what they want to achieve? What's the most important aspect?
Well, there's gonna be plenty of like 5-step, 10-step programs out there that are gonna tell you that no problem. Here's what here's what you need. And I guess I would say people need to know who they are and how they operate and what your defaults are as a person. If you're, and there's plenty of scales and measures for, just to understand yourself and how you are going to react in situations, what's going to drive you, what's going to demotivate you, whatever it is. So knowing yourself, I think knowing your values is also the other important thing, what matters to you and what's important. Yeah. And then I think after that, it's just being clear on what you want to have happen and how you want to pursue it, where you're going. I think any of those are going to really help people get to the most out of themselves.
Yeah. Why do people not know themselves like they should? Why do you think that is? Why do people struggle to actually know themselves?
We are creatures of habit. Like we just do things the same way all the time. It works pretty well. This is fine. Or this works terribly, but I know what's going to happen at the end, so it's fine. Like there's no surprises, right? Once things become habitual. Okay. And I think once we have these habits, we stop being curious about them and looking into them. Like, well, why is my habit is like this is not a great question, but like, how does this habit impact me and where I want to go and what I want to do? I think there's also a lot where, people are complicated. I like to, you this or that, you're this or, like 2 options, 3 options, whatever it is, just pick one, introvert or extrovert, whatever it is, you're one or the other. But, there's this huge gradient scale in between and situations and this and that, so there is a lot of complexity. So I don't know why I think people don't do it because it's maybe challenging or hard, or they don't know where to look, or it's just, well, this is a habit. This is just who I am. I'm sure we both heard people say like, this is just how I operate. This is just how I communicate. This is just who I am. You're like, okay, great. Like, that much enough to label it as who or how or what you're doing. But is that optimal? Is that really how you want it to be? Is sort of a more complicated question.
Yeah. Okay. So somebody's watching, listening today, and they want to contact you and they want to say, help me, I need help. I saw what you've said. I've heard what you do. I need help. What are you going to say to them? What's the first conversation you're going to have? Where does it start?
Uh, I start with so many questions, I guess. Like I'm
Yeah,
so curious usually
that's
about,
smart. That's very smart. Ask a lot of questions.
yeah, who they are, what they want, what they're doing, what their situation is like, even from team to team, like, person to person, even between people within the same team, even, which is fascinating also. Like they see the challenge very differently. Like if they're, something is not going right or they want something to happen, like the reasons I see for that are very personal and very specific. And so I try to just get into, yeah, what brings them, like what they actually want to have happen and how much they're willing to do to make what they want to have happen, right? Because these are sort of two pieces of it. Like, oh, there's this conflict we're having, we need to solve it. I'm like, great, well, how much are you willing to really do to solve this conflict? Are you just willing to slap a band-aid on it, or are you willing to like really get in there and do some surgery and like poke around a little bit? So yeah, I mean, it's very situational, obviously, but it's a lot of questions for me.
Good. So what ideally, where do you see yourself in a year, 5 years, 10 years? Do you set goals like that? Where does leadership coaching take you in the next few years?
That is a great question. I maybe should be more like time bound for my goals, but I'm not exactly. So I don't have a 5 or a 10 or whatever, but I've been putting more and more energy into cultivating mastermind groups, which is like a group of people at the same level that together work together over time. And so facilitating these groups so that it can be so transformational and so meaningful for the people in the groups, but they're small and you have to find the right people. So there's like a lot of energy that goes into kind of the cultivation side, and then the facilitating and keeping them going. Like they last for 3 or 6 months, like or longer, it's like a long-term sort of commitment. And so, I mean, my goal in the near future is to just keep cultivating and building more masterminds. And I would love to focus on specialized communities. So I have done them for like roller derby league leaders, so they're all the same sort of mindset coming in, or people within sort of different subgroups and subpopulations. So I'd love to branch out and get more specialized groups in masterminds, teams, types of sport, whatever it is. That's my goal of the moment. So
Nice.
I don't
Well,
ongoing.
ongoing, yeah, of course, yeah. You explained masterminds a little bit. That seems to be a big aspect of you. Can you explain it a little bit deeper, just so if somebody says mastermind, sees that word, what does that mean? You talked about it, but break it down a little bit more.
Absolutely. Absolutely. A mastermind is a group of people that meet together over time, many meetings over time. And the purpose is that they each grow and learn, but they also support the growth and learning of everyone in the group. And so the group is very small, like maybe 5 or 6 people at the most, maybe 4. So somewhere in there, pretty teeny group meeting, regularly. And I would say regularly is like every other week or every week, like pretty often, and during the meeting, it's a very egalitarian type of process. So instead of having me show up and be like, here's a training for today, and like one way sort of me offering information, each person has time where they have the floor and they can ask a question, they can pose a challenge that they're working on, they can describe a situation that they're facing, and it's the job of everyone in that group to offer a perspective, idea, or resource. Oh, I did that same thing, here's what I did. Or like, oh, I read this book, here's an idea, or I saw this thing. And so everyone's there to offer help and support, but also so everyone has the floor at some time, but then also we follow up like the next time, right? So, oh, I had this challenge, this struggle, I try this, I'm going to go try it, and let me get a report back. So there's this built-in accountability. So people who are actually driven to be accountable, I think there's plenty of places you could read a book, you could write an article, you could surf the web for 100,000 years and find 800 YouTube videos that tell you exactly, how to do the thing. But unless you engage with humans on a personal level and have accountability over time, I think a lot of that, you're like, oh yeah, I watched that YouTube video, it was great, like whatever. Yep. So that sense of, if people are looking for actual transformational change, and that little gentle accountability really helps that out. Like knowing you're going to see these people at the next meeting and they're going to be like, oh, how did it go with that challenge you were facing? Like, what did that do? And you'll be like, well, here's what happened. Like it gently forces accountability versus like, here's a goal, here's a red mark, here's a like, on your whatever. So those aspects of it, the people I find that get the most out of it are just willing to engage. And it doesn't mean you need to be an extrovert. Like there's very introverted personalities that are well supported because it's a small space, and like you just need to share your piece and offer what you have. But also that accountability, like people who are ready to like take things to another level, fare really well in masterminds.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, that accountability aspect's probably the most crucial part of it because, yeah, you like you say, you know, anybody can watch YouTube and just say, "Oh, okay, yeah, I've got that information now." But you know, if you're not utilizing it, it's probably gonna go by the wayside and not be there. Are you part of a few mastermind groups yourself personally?
I facilitate many.
Oh,
And personally, I'm a part of one, I guess a couple right now. I mean, some people, they're just like, well, this is just a meetup. And I'm like, okay. But like, you know, like, and I think there's different words people use to call different types of things. But yeah, I would actually say a few. Like, even though they might, the facilitator for others, they might just call it something different. But I
right.
think there's like a lot of intention that needs to come to a mastermind for it to really be the most impactful.
I was really excited that you contacted us and wanted to be a guest. I love that you have been guests on other podcasts. This new PodMatch community that I joined, that's how we connected. I saw my name. I was the 10th highest rated podcast on PodMatch
Oh,
yesterday.
congratulations.
Yeah, thank you so much. That really excited me and gave me a big motivation to keep going. I look forward to speaking to tons of people in this community, but I'm so glad that you were the first guest we've had. It was exciting and fun to find out so much about you and so much about your leadership coaching. How do people connect with you if they want to take this further?
Sure. I'm everywhere in the social media, and my website is wslleadership.com, and I'm on Instagram and Facebook too. But the website has, if you want to learn more, that's a great place to go. I have articles. I read books and talk about them on my website. Like there's all kinds of info and stuff there. So that's the easiest maybe to get info. And then feel free to drop me an email or message me on the social media. Love talking with people. Obviously, I'm here
I
talking
love
with you, but I love it.
the WSL stands for work, sport, life. Very crucial for almost everybody that we're going to have tune in. I love that you've combined that, made it your website, made it your mission and goal, and good luck in the future. I really hope we can do this again. And thank you so much for connecting, and thank you so much for all your insight. It was fantastic, and I'm going to direct people towards you. Let's keep in close contact. I would appreciate that a lot.
Excellent. I've had a great time talking with you too, Darren. Thanks for making this whole thing happen. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Iggy. All the best. Yeah, take care of yourself, and yeah, we'll talk sometime through 2021, especially when things get a lot easier to go out and about, and yeah, not be so holed up in our homes. I love Oregon. Definitely one of my favorite states. Spent a lot of great time down there over the years. I love the Blazers. Went to the Rose Garden so much over the years, and just love going there. There's so many, just great aspects of Oregon and Portland. Yeah, such a beautiful place to live down there. I live in Vancouver here in Canada, and yeah, we love it up here, but we definitely love traveling the Pacific Northwest and going to places like where you are.
Fantastic. Come by anytime. I would look forward to, staying in connection for sure.
Great. Okay. Well, thanks so much. Take care of yourself, and yeah, we'll talk soon.
Awesome.
Okay. Thanks everybody for tuning in. As always, really appreciate your support. Go to our website, completesportsmedia.com, and you'll find it on all your podcast platforms. We look forward to connecting with you soon. Enjoy. Take care. Love you. Bye for now.